my ambition was to be world champion. I mean, that was always, as a kid, that was always my main aim. Having been to 2 Olympics, I mean, I think there would be nothing better, or the highest pinnacle in the show jumping career would be to win a gold medal, no doubt. My first memories of riding, I think, wasn't until I was about 4 or 5. The pony I had then I've still got now. He's 38 years old, and a pony called Oxo. I used to go to the gymkhanas a lot every Sunday. I used to do leading range gymkhanas, and then graduated into the older group, and then I jumped him as well at the local shows. He was actually a great pony. Originally I wanted to be a national hunt jockey. That was my first love, because I think I used to tack the pony up in the field, gallop it as fast as I could around there, build some jumps and knees up around my ears, and I think it was the thrill of the speed and whatever that really prompted me to do that. My father was in the veterinary corps in the army. He was stationed in Egypt. My mother used to ride just for fun. We had a field behind the house at home, and that's where I used to keep the pony and ride. I didn't have any riding lessons as such. I mean, tried to figure it out for myself. Fell off the odd time and back on and kept trying, you know, perseverance. Just got on and fell off and got on and fell off again, and learnt myself. When I was at school, the last school, the headmaster wrote a letter to my father and said, I think it's better that your son stops away from school now and pursues his outdoor activities. And I think I left school when I was 15. I didn't have any O-levels or A-levels or any exams. But I had a pony, a 14-2 pony, and he wasn't the easiest pony in the world. And a friend of my father's, Lowell Weaver, who now is chief steward at the Horse of the Year show in Olympia, he knew Ted Edgar very well, and he was a friend of my father's, and he said, I'll take you over to Edgars and he'll help you with the pony.
And so the young Nick Skelton started out on his show jumping career. Ted Edgar knew the first time he saw him ride that he had a special talent, and Ted soon took Nick on, and it didn't take him long to make it to the top.
The very first really Grand Prix horse I rode, or the one that put me on the map, was a horse called Maybe. When we got him to start with, he was very difficult. He'd go in the ring sometimes and stand in the middle of the ring, and I had to get off and lead him out. And we used to hunt him, took him hunting in the winter time, and we gradually got him going. And in the end, he was probably the most genuine horse I ever rode.
All depends on this turn into the last 2. 22, oh yes! Time to beat 27.9! 27.6! Fantastic time!
Clear round, into the lead he goes, Nick Skelton maybe, 27.6. All up to Robert
Nick was to stay with Ted and Liz Edgar for 12 years, but life in the early days was certainly no bed of roses.
When I first went to the Edgars, I had a couple of novice horses to ride, but my main job was Ted's personal valet, I think. I used to clean his boots and fetch his cigarettes and wash the lorries and cars and just general dog's body for a start. But I think that was the best part, because I think that did me more good than anything. Taught me to look after things, keep the place tidy. It was like being in the army there. I mean, I don't know a tougher place where you could go. I mean, I used to come home some days and throw the towel in and say, right, I'm not going back there again. And then my father used to take me back every morning. It was tough, but I mean, now looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
After the initial successes with Maybe, including a team silver medal at the Alternative Olympics in Rotterdam in 1980, Nick really established himself as a top show jumper with the brilliant and versatile St James, owned by Terry Clements. Bred in Ireland, St James started his show jumping career with another famous and respected rider.
We brought him off David Broom, and David won a lot of classes with him. But he won some fantastic classes. I mean, I wouldn't like to say which was the best horse I ever rode, but I would say he was one of them. He won in Calgary, Toronto, New York, Hickstead.
Competition there after this.
I mean, he won a lot of things. Olympia.
They won them both last year.
Yeah, and this horse really does look as if he's forgotten how to have a fence down. He did have one on the first day, but that was the first one for an awful long time. And look at him today, just on springs.
Well, that's a clear for Nick Skelton and St James.
Nick and St James won nearly £250,000 in prize money during their career, including the King's Cup and 4 Volvo World Cup qualifiers, the last of which being here at Olympia in 1984, winning for the second successive year and beating his friend and rival, Michael Whittaker, on Owen Gregory.
The curtains are drawn and the arena is set for what could be a tremendous battle.
Well, this should be fascinating because I'm sure that Nick will take virtually the same line as did Michael, but I think he'll go a little bit faster. This horse just covers the ground so well, and Michael wasn't too quick between the fences.
Now, this is where he's going to move, and you can feel the hush in this great arena. He's up by 2 seconds. Michael knows it. Look at that for a turn, cuts right in there. Oh, he's away! What a run! Michael knows that's it, 32.62. What a chance he took coming round the turn to that combination. He actually cut across the pillar of the Villa Gate.
But Nick and St James were particularly famous for their daring rounds against the clock. Again and again, they went into jump-offs and beat seemingly ungettable times and thrilling the crowds in the process at the famous indoor arenas, such as Wembley. And as we see here at Olympia in 1982, beating Germany's former world champion Norbert Kuf on fire.
Well, nobody is more determined than this little chap. But that fire turned the corners so sharply, almost on a sixpence. And Norbert Kuf knows this is the last one between him and £4,000. This is good. This is good. Come on, Nick. And the crowd know it. Looking for under 26 seconds here. Come on, Nick, you're on the turn. And just listen to him cheer him home. He's done it. He's done it. 31.8. Well, what a great time. What can you say about that? On the last night of the 1982 season.
At about the same time as Nick started his wonderful partnership with St James, Ted bought a horse called If Ever, after Nick had seen him perform miracles in a puissance in Gothenburg, Sweden.
After maybe, I had a little horse called If Ever. He was a roan, red roan. He was about 15, 2 or 3. He was French bred by a horse called Noncan, who actually is good jumping line. But this horse, he absolutely had no mouth whatsoever. He was nearly uncontrollable. He just, no matter what bridle you put on him, you couldn't hold him. And he was best in the big open space like Hickstead or Aachen, where he won 3 Grand Prix at Hickstead and 1 in Aachen. You had to just swing on and hope for the best, you know.
Oh, he was a long way off that and made it.
Well, he's got to move on now because he was slower than Melody Smith at that point. 44.3. He's really got to quicken, and he is. The crowd willing him on as he comes round the turn, but there's little to choose between. 44.3, he's going to do that. 44.2, just a tenth of a second. And that was a well-judged time because Nick Skelton was behind.
Nick and If Ever won 3 Grand Prix at Hickstead in 1982, but over one fence they took a rather unusual route, as Nick explains.
If you see here, he jumps the wall rather than the poles, because that was a few meetings before. I tried to jump the rails, and he ran out with me and jumped the wall. So from then on, I just always kept jumping the wall when I got that fence came up.
The horse that gave Nick his most famous victories was Apollo, a Dutch-bred gelding by Edgars. This imposing 17-hand jumper was to rise to the very top. If St James was the one that really established Nick in the show jumping world, then Apollo formed the backbone of his future career, winning classes with Nick from 1984 to 90, 7 glorious seasons. But on his very first outing at a major show, Nick had a very uncomfortable experience.
He was quite a character, really, because he liked to have his own way, run away. He liked to be in control. I remember the very first time I rode him at the Royal Show. He used to jump to the right a lot, and so I put a brush on him to stop him jumping right. And we went in the ring. He jumped the first 2 fences and just took off, and he just careered round and round and round the ring. And I eventually got him to stop, and took the brush off, and he was never a problem ever since. But it was something he didn't like. You know, you had to let him have his own way a little bit. Here we have Apollo winning the bronze individual medal in St Gallen. I remember the ground here being quite sticky. The ground actually to him didn't make a lot of difference whether it was hard or soft or, you know, whatever really. He went in any ground. You actually don't get the feel of how big these jumps were actually, and they were very, very big. I think the 86 and 87 were probably his best years. I won 2 individual bronze medals at the World Championships and the European Championships, and 2 team golds with him as well.
Those 2 team gold medals were in Aachen in the World Championships the previous year, and here in St Gallen, Switzerland in 1987, in what was one of the strongest British teams for many years, with Nick riding alongside John Whittaker on the Great Milton, his brother Michael on Amanda, and Malcolm Pyra on the ever-dependable Towlands Anglezark. A formidable quartet.
Mit dem Schlussergebnis von 10,32 Punkten die Mannschaft von Großbritannien.
And for Nick in these European Championships in St Gallen in 87, an individual bronze medal was an added bonus for what was a magnificent partnership.
Gewinner der Bronzemedaille. Troisième, gagnant la médaille de bronze. Third, winner of the bronze medal. Nummer 87, Nick Skelton, Großbritannien auf Raffles Apollo.
The previous year, Nick and Frenchman Pierre Durand, who won the individual gold medal in St Gallen with his brilliant little black horse Chapeloup, met in the final for the individual world title in Aachen. As per tradition, the top 4 riders swap horses, and completing the quartet, Olympic silver medalist from the USA Conrad Homfeld with Abdullah, and the unknown Canadian rider Gail Greenough with Mr T. As Gail's teammate, the famous Ian Miller, looked on, Nick and Apollo got off to a great start.
And a big course this afternoon, really. It's they've given nothing away. It's bang up to the limit all the way, 4'11". Funny little turn there, round the ditch. Could just get them changing legs and a little bit off balance. That's a big oxer there. It's 4'11" high and 5'3" wide. And now the first of the related distances, this parallel here, 4'11" wide. Again, and high, square, dead square parallel, 22 yards down there, short 5 strides, very short indeed for this class of horse. And now another related distance here from a 4'11" vertical, and 30 yards, short 7 or thereabouts, to a square oxer. And now the combination, this is possibly the hardest. It's a difficult vertical going in, 4'11". This is very good for Nick. 1 to go, 2 strides, short strides, that's great.
Nick was the hot favourite to take the gold before he rode Gail Greenoff's Mr T, a round that turned into a nightmare.
I remember well riding Mr T in Aachen. I mean, it was totally, I think, my fault. I mean, every other 3 horses I rode, I mean, I got all of them, rode them with determination, and did everything for them. I mean, carried them around. But I remember when I first sat on Mr T, he was just like a time bomb waiting to explode. I mean, you couldn't touch him with your legs. When you got all of the reins, he was all of a dither. I mean, it really matters who you follow in those things. And I was following Pierre Durand all the time, and the horses weren't going too well for him. And I think Mr T had a disastrous round, and I got the kickback from it, really. And I tried to sit there as still as possible, a bit like Gail rides herself, with no pressure on him, and then just go into the combination. I remember he started to trot, so I was, then I tried to shake him up, and by then it was too late, and he stopped going in and crashed the fence, and by then it was all over.
Missed it.
That was desperate. He didn't miss, actually. He didn't miss. The horse broke to a trot. The tactics he was trying to employ, it just blew back in his face. He was trying to sit so quietly on him.
In a flash, the gold was gone, and Nick had to settle for the bronze. But earlier, he had thrilled the huge crowd with this peach-fur ride on Chapeloup, a great horse in the hands of a great rider.
Nick had a clear with Apollo, and Chapeloup and Pierre Durand, the old partnership together, made their first major mistake of the week and had 2 down with his own partner. So what is Nick going to make of this? It's vital to get this little horse out of the way and go clear. Conrad Homfeld has already had 4 faults with Nick's Apollo, United States rider.
This is grand here, because this horse goes hand in glove with Nick. He's keeping hold of his head. Look, he dare not loose him off, because that's when he used to stop with Durand, and this is super for Nick.
There we go. And Nick is still all clear, and Pierre Durand standing there.
2 years earlier, Nick had been made to turn professional. His dream of riding in the Olympics in Los Angeles in 1984 went by the board. And what a chance he would have had with St James at the height of his career. Between June 1984 and September 85, Nick won no less than 10 World Cup qualifiers and Grand Prix on the trot, the last of which was the richest in the world, the Du Maurier International in Spruce Meadows, Canada. And Nick knows just how much he owes to the brilliant St. James.
Without a jump off, or if Nick Skelton, now on course, goes clean, she could force him into a jump off. Nick Skelton winding up.
It was very wet, the weather we had there, and the ground was really quite sodden, and I mean, he was brilliant in those conditions. He loved the wet, and he actually this day jumped the only double clear to win. And this was really one of the last Grand Prix that he won, especially before I left the Edgars at the end of that year. But I mean, not only that year, he won the Grand Prix in Antwerp, and Olympia in Hickstead, and the King George in Birmingham. I mean, he won. I mean, a lot of classes. He really put me on the map, this horse, and he was a great trier, very careful, and he's one of my all-time favourites, really.
Laura Bolitsky was clear in that first round. Remember, she will be our last competitor in the second round of competition.
One jump left here for Great Britain's Nick Skelton. One jump left for a double clear round. And he does it! 2 clear rounds.
A typical Skelton round clinched the Richest Grand Prix. But at the end of that year, Nick and Ted Edgars split up. And for the first time in his career, at the age of 28, he had to face up to the future on his own.
It was very difficult when I left, because I only had a house and a little bit of land. I didn't have any stables or indoor school or jumping field or anything. I mean, we went looking for places, and we finally found one which had nothing at all, but we built it up to what it is now. And it was quite difficult to actually keep on competing at that level, and then trying to build a place at the same time.
After St. James retired the following year, Nick then bought his namesake, J. Nick, from Lancashire international David Bowen. The Irish gelding by Wiley Trout was to be the first of Nick's 3 successive Hickstead Derby winners from 1987 to 1989. And Nick was in no doubt about the horse's ability to cope with the Derby's famous natural obstacles.
I think had a great talent. He had great ability. He had any scope. He was very, very careful. The only thing he didn't have was a brain, really. He was very hot, and really ran himself into trouble. But he, never really ever got a bridle that really suited him. He's very hard to hold. But I mean, you can see there, he's a classic stylist. Everything, his front end works, the back end works. He's just his brain let him down a lot of the time, really. You can see him now, he's fighting all the way, and I think even to the line. When he finished, he was still fighting. He's a very extravagant jumper. I mean, he didn't jump fences by inches, he jumped them by feet. He came to a terrible end, really, the horse, in France at a show. Before I went into the ring, he jumped one final fence vertical, and he trod on himself, overreached badly as he left the floor, and he pulled his foot off. I mean, it was a horrific accident. I mean, the horse, we had to put him down, but that's what sort of horse he was, he did everything extravagantly.
Good takeoff. Beautiful. 2/3 of the way down. Now the dike.
Oh, this is brilliant. Oh, now he's away. Now's the chance. Now's where you've got to keep your cool.
I remember the first time I rode him in the Derby, he was unlucky. He had a couple down, but I mean, I think for a horse to go and win the Derby first time in the ring is very difficult, because I think they need to know the course, know the bank, know the dike. And he did jump the dike that first time, and that's what then thought maybe he would win a Derby one day. And the following year, he did win it. But he wasn't easy to ride around there. It was very difficult, strong. But I mean, one thing with the Derby, you've always got plenty of time, and there's not a lot of related distances, so you can actually jump the fences singly. You know, you can jump the first fence and get yourself set up for the second fence, and then you turn down to the ditches, and you've got plenty of time to do everything. And I think I got home half a second inside the time.
And look at the time, a second inside. That was just an incredible round.
It was indeed, and that is the 24th clear round in the 27th Derby. A great performance there by Nick Skelton with J. Nick.
Well, there's only one word can describe that round: class. Well, from the horse and the rider, because that was just brilliant.
Hickstead was fast becoming a favourite hunting ground for Nick, and this time in the Derby he rode Apollo. The partnership were in top form, having won the big Grand Prix at the Dublin Horse Show 2 weeks earlier, and Nick couldn't heap enough praise on this horse.
Well, Apollo, he was, I think, probably one of the greatest horses the show jumping world has ever seen. Basically because he could win the Derby, the Grand Prix. He jumped double clear Nations Cups. He jumped 7'5" in a puissance, and he could win the fastest speed class there ever was to win. And you really don't realise how great he was, until he was retired and didn't have him anymore. But he was 17 hands plus. He had an enormous stride, and to ride actually around this Derby, in the end, he was like automatic ride. I mean, he knew exactly where he was going, exactly what he was doing. I mean, I tried a couple of years before to try and jump the dyke, how you should jump it, which was slow and, controlled, but that never ever worked with him. So in the end, I just let him run at it, and from then on, he never ever hit it. I think he jumped it 3 or 4 times after that. He was second one year to John Lenningham with Gabran when he won it, and also then he won 2, and then he was second again to Vital. But he was magnificent to ride around here. Once you got him in his stride, you could just sit there and, I don't think he ever got out of that stride. If you watch him, he's always controlled, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And if you watch him now when he goes up the bank, he knew where he was going, and he whips around the corner and he runs up it as quick as he can. I mean, from this point, he really took over. There he goes, he's off. And when he takes 2 strides at the bottom, I mean, they're very, very short for him, and he does everything possible to clear it. The last stride there is very, very short for him.
Now then, he had one mistake on the dyke last time. Can he go
now onto the
this?
dyke. And like 6 or 7 strides where I just loosed him, let him run, and try and keep on the left-hand side, because I think it's much smaller on the left.
He's gone.
A lot of people, they jump in the middle, and then the horses jump out right-handed where it's a lot larger, I think you have to, around the Derby course, you have to take every chance you can and jump in wherever it's smaller. The Hickstead Derby, I think, is a unique event.
He's still got to concentrate.
I think there's nothing like it in the world, really. I mean, the course is brilliant design. The way it's all run, I know it's in white poles and rustic poles, which I think is a good thing. But the actual route and where everything fits in, whoever designed it is, take my hat off to them. I think when you get this far and you're clear, then you start to get a bit nervous, because you've only got 3 jumps left to go, and the double's not that difficult. If you can get in, you can push out. And now this is the only fence where, between you and victory, and you get a bit excited. You look at the clock. You must try and remember not to get, loose your horse too much. Try and keep them together in a good rhythm, balanced. And there you go.
Nick Skelton, second year, 2 different horses, and a clear, magnificent performance.
Shortly after Nick left the Edgars, he found a new owner in Tony Elliott, and they bought a few young horses, including a good-looking 5-year-old called Grand Slam. And the following year, after Polo had won his second derby and Nick's third, Grand Slam started showing his owners some real return on their investment. And Nick had a real affection for this horse.
Burma Grand Slam.
The Grand Slam, I think, was one of the most genuine horses I ever rode.
Yeah.
He tried to do everything to please you. You wouldn't have said he had the most ability in the world, but he always tried his very best, you know. And if you look at him, he was a wonderful model of a horse. Always got his ears forward. If he hadn't been a show jumper, I think he would have probably been a top show hunter. I mean, he was absolutely moved perfectly. He's a very good model, and he just wanted to please. I mean, I had him from a 5-year-old until I think until he was 12. And well, when we first had him, he really had no ability at all. And the older he got, the more ability he got. But he always wanted to do his best.
Now this last line, rustic style in 5 strides to the combination, which he's been riding very short. Classic, absolute classic. Beautifully ridden down that last line. Nick obviously in determined mood. The farther his elbows go back, the more determined he is. He comes down here, he moves him from here to get the 5. He runs him, look, all the way to get him in well. You've got to get into a combination well to come out well. But then he has to shorten. Takes a check there, holds him off the vertical. Couple of checks here. Gets him off the front rail of that oxer, and then the good horse as he is, stretches to make the back rail. That's a very, very satisfying round for Nick.
Yes, and,
Nick showed there all his special gifts, and he's certainly always been a supporter of the indoor show jumping circuit.
I think jumping indoors is so much different to the outdoors, basically because the fences come much quicker. Whenever you turn, you've got a fence there. Then there's 4 or 5 strides and there's another fence on a left angle, on a right angle. You really have to be a lot more alert indoors. But I prefer jumping indoors. I think it's better for the horses. They don't have to jump too many courses all the time, and the maximum time's really about 60-65 seconds, so then they're not working so hard. And the ground's always good and the weather's always good. And basically the horses last longer.
The first part of the double. Now he's gone round there to the first 2 parts of the combination. Now inside, he's got inside, that's good. Back to the gate. 3, 4, 5 and 6 now. London Bridge. And now he's got to be a brave man to turn back short to this, because this is enormous off the corner, and this is a good round. Flies to the last. What a stride. Oh, brilliant, Skelly. Great round that. That is just the sort of round you want to conjure from a horse when you've got to go first in a Grand Prix.
Well, that's a brilliant round.
Absolute Skelton at his very best, and in fairness to the horse, he was just operating. It's a lovely horse, this Grand Slam. He's a long way off that, but the horse does everything for him. No pulls here, look, lands running and lets him run all the way down. Takes a stride out. That's the one he wanted. He says, that'll do. Get up there. Great start.
Another horse that Tony and Nick bought was the German-bred Top Gun. And as soon as Nick got him home, he knew he was a real winner.
He was an absolute star, that horse. I mean, I think if I had to have a pick of any horse in the world, I think I would take him. It was an unbelievable feeling. You only had to be in the vicinity of the fence, whether you were a foot near or a foot far off, fast, slow, however big the fences were, it didn't matter. He always looked at the fence, ears forward, and he could always measure the fence up for himself. I mean, I would nearly say, would be the pick of the horses.
The disappointment of losing Top Gun was emphasised when Dutchman Jan Tops won a team gold medal here in Barcelona 2 years later. The cruel side of Lady Luck as Nick produced the horse to Grand Prix level, only to lose him at his peak. But it was tempered by David Broom's invitation to Nick to ride his Phoenix Park, a horse that had all sorts of setbacks during his career.
He was a tremendous horse, had really a lot of scope, could jump big fences easy, but all his life he was plagued with problems. We call him the Barney horse in the stable, basically because he had one lung, he nearly died of pleurisy. I think he had like 1.5, 2 years off with that when David had him. And then he had a carbon fibre tendon implant in the one tendon, plus he was fired behind. He really had, I mean, he had so much wrong with him, but he was a tremendous horse. I think without all that problem, he would have been one of the greats.
Brilliant.
He really had to, when you jump the fences, you had to sit very, very still because you didn't have to give him any pressure off the floor, because he had so much jump.
36.80 to beat. Now he's got to take a chance at the last. 36.80. Is he going to do it? 36.20. He has done it. Nick Skelton, the winner of the Grand Prix, leading rider of the show. Fantastic jumping there.
Phoenix Park and Nick were to win this Kerrygold Grand Prix at the Royal Dublin Horse Show in successive years. And Nick was again proving that given the material, he has few peers in this sport, especially against the clock. But Nick had a few uncomfortable moments on Phoenix Park.
It's quite difficult to sit on, really. When he jumped, he always used to whip back one way or the other, and I think I fell off him one day when he at home and he did it, jumped a fence and turned so quick I went off. I remember when I received the trophy here in Dublin from Mr. Reynolds, the president. He handed me the trophy and he whipped round and nearly had me off. I mean, he's a very, very sharp horse.
Whoa. Steady now. The bull colonel goes in to rescue the trophy. Mr. Reynolds wisely retired to the side.
But the career of any show jumping rider is a precarious one. You have to have good horses, and that means good sponsors and owners, and when they suddenly fall on hard times, new replacements need to be found quickly.
After Tony Elliott went with all the horses, I then started to ride for Sue Welsh, who I think is possibly the nicest person that I've ever ridden for. She's an absolute lady. And she's a great horsewoman. She never complains. She understands the job inside out. She used to ride herself. She was ladies European champion. You don't have to give her any excuses. You know, there's nothing to hide from her. You know, she's a great lady. And she bought limited edition. He's a difficult character. When he's on form, he's great. When he's off form, he's terrible. But he never holds any grudges against you, you know.
Sue Welch's limited edition took a long time to mature, and his first classic win came finally in the King's Cup at Hickstead in 1993.
Can give us the first clear. It should be Nick. 6 or 7 strides. Nick takes the extra one to the double of Railway Gate's traditional fence in the King's Cup, 5 foot apiece. No real problems to the course. They've just got to be accurate and having the horse under them capable of jumping it, and this is making it look very easy indeed. The treble combination following those 5'3" Derby rails down the hill, water under both of them, but only single fences over them, no oxers. A little bit lucky there, leaves it 2 short strides, and now the last fence, 5'2". Come on, Nick, first clear round coming up. Well done, that's the one we've been looking for, and we've got some good horses yet to come.
That clear round was never challenged and gave Nick his second King's Cup of his career. But the following year, limited editions certainly showed that he can have off moments.
Only this year, in the Nations Cup at Hickstead, he tipped completely upside down at the triple bar and in the mud and crashed terrible. And he never went in the ring again until the King's Cup at the Royal International this year, and he finished second, jumped 2 great rounds, which is good really, because normally if you give a horse such a crash like that, you know, it takes you 6 months to get them back on the road again, you know, to get them feeling confident again. But he doesn't seem to hold any grudges against you.
So I think he'll go for it.
Got a little bit of different tack on as well, Nick, today. He's telling me that it's a bit that's attached to the noseband as well, so he's got a bit of pull on the end of his horse's nose. Very soft bit, actually, more like a hackamore. And I said to Nick, he seems to be carrying his head a bit lower today. He said, yeah, but at least I can hold him and regulate him. Just see how the steering holds up in this against the clock. Jumped a good first round.
He's about 2 seconds up on that gate. Whoa. Needs to be here in around 30. Oh, and he's way up on that. So, now to the turn. Still clear. And he's done it!
Only an outstanding ride by Michael Whitaker on Midnight Madness was to deprive Nick of his second successive victory in the King's Cup on limited edition. But as he was beaten by his teammate, it wasn't such a bitter pill to swallow.
I think with the average team that there is now, there's no stronger team anywhere. But it's good to actually be a part of that team, because you know it's not all eyes focused on you personally. You know, if things don't go right one day, there's always John or Michael or Marie or Liz or Jeff or whatever to back you up, which I think is a very good thing. John and Michael and myself, we've been travelling now together for a good few many years, and although we all like to win, I don't think we've ever that I can remember ever had one crossword with each other. And I think that, well, if I don't win, I'm glad they do, and I'm sure if they don't win, they're pleased if I do, which is a good thing. And I don't think that would go on in many other sports. You know, we're the best of friends, have a good time at night, and you know, we get on good together.
Another of Nick's current inmates is Major Wager, at present recovering from carbon fibre surgery after injuring himself in Paris in '94.
He's a big favourite of mine, really, because I got him right from the word go as a 5-year-old, and he always, I don't know if he ever had bad eyesight or what, but he always gave the jumps. If the jump was 3 foot, he jumped 5 foot. Every fence he always gave at least a foot. I mean, he's a tremendous athlete and had a fantastic technique the way he jumped. But he took a long time to bring through, but I think because he was so careful. What time are you going to go? He's phoning, yeah. It took me at least 3 or 4 years to get him to jump in like the Grand Prix and everything. But then he had one major problem, and that was he wouldn't jump the water jump. No matter what I did, I couldn't get him to jump it. He jumped it once as a young horse in the Fox Hunter Regional Final, and from then on he never ever jumped it. And he slung me in the middle of it in Rotterdam. And then I gave up. Then I never jumped him outside anymore. Just kept him for the indoors, which he used to win at least a class every show, if not 2.
The previous year in Paris, Major Wager won the Volvo World Cup qualifier, a victory that clearly gave Nick particular pleasure. When he came in for the jump-off, Nick had to beat 45.4 seconds, set by his great friend Michael Whitaker on Midnight Madness. Any victory such as this one is sweet, but the one Nick has always wanted is an Olympic medal, and this ambition, prior to the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, was being hampered by the lack of a top-class horse. And it was only shortly before the Games that Nick took over the ride on Joe Haller's Dollar Girl from John Whitaker. But his dream was to drown in a strip of dark blue water.
Well, this is probably one of my most famous rounds in my career, I think, the Barcelona Olympics. In Dollar Girl, a lot of people say, oh, what went wrong, and they all think they all know why it went wrong, but I think the water jump at the end was it was very early in the morning, like 8 o'clock, and the light was shining across the trees, and it was very dark in that corner, and the water jump was actually very black. I mean, people only remember her for stopping at the water jump, where she's, touch wood, she's never ever stopped at another one since or before. I think the course was very big. I mean, she was jumping tremendous. I mean, every fence she was given at least 6 inches. I mean, she was jumping fantastic and going behind. But if you watch this round right there, I mean, that was an incredible jump. And again here. And I mean, I was getting a great feeling on her. I was just, it's very confident. This ox here, she is very big. She jumps it easy, but as she goes further on, jumps the water, just jumps the water. Still jumping good, but now when she watching now going the combination, she gives up a little bit. You can see the front legs come out, and she doesn't jump the oxer so free. There, and I think that was the first warning light. And again coming out, she starts to give up a little bit, and that's the thing with Dollar Girl. When you keep her confident, she's very, very brave. But when she loses confidence, then she gives up a little bit. And I think with being like 15 or 16 fences in this course, and all big ones and big questions, I think right now she jumps this one here. Now, if you watch this next oxer, she really just nearly touches the back rail with her belly, and that she started to get a bit scared. And I think, there, look, and then once she thought she'd finished, and she thought, well, I've got to turn away from home and go again. It was dark. I mean, she had no intention of jumping that. That was fence 14 and 2 doubles. She jumped 17 fences by then, and giving them so much room that she just said that's enough. Then she rested in the afternoon and came out. I mean, I didn't train over a water jump outside or anything. I mean, I really think it was the light, but a lot of horses had a lot of trouble with that fence. In the afternoon she came out and she jumped it fine. But that's all people remember her for, is stopping in the water in Barcelona, because she's won a lot of good classes since.
But for any show jumper, there is always life after every last event. And Dollar Girl and Nick Skelton put their disappointment behind them and began looking to the future. The first half of 1993 was not a particularly profitable time for Nick, except his King's Cup victory on limited edition. But the Du Maurier International in Calgary that September was to change all that.
For him in the jump off, but he's got to get there first.
This is Dollar Girl winning the Du Maurier Grand Prix in Calgary in 1993. It's the world's richest Grand Prix, the one everybody wants to win. It's £120,000 to the winner. And it's out in Calgary in Alberta. I think this day she was magnificent. She's never jumped better in her whole life, I don't think. Which is a good, good thing really on a day like this. But it's a tremendous show here. I mean, the Southerns that run the show and own the place, I mean, they're tremendous people. They have sponsors like you can't believe. I mean, so many, and they look after them so well and look after everybody when they're there, the press and the riders, and it's a great place to go. It's a pity there weren't more shows like this in the world.
Dollar Girl may be appropriately.
But you see here, Dollar Girl, she's jumping very freely. She's confident and happy, and the ground was perfect. Remember, after the Olympics, she's had I gave her, been 2 years since the Games, and I really looked after her and rested her a lot and brought her back fresh again. I also think at the Games, she'd had 3 different riders within that year, with Thomas Fuchs and John,
all up to Nick now.
Whittaker and then myself, and you know, taking different riders, they have to get used to everybody, and like we have to get used to the horses.
She does it. We have a jump off for the Du Maurier Limited International. What a performance by Great Britain's Nick Skelton.
Nick's opponent in the jump-off was the dynamic Austrian veteran Hugo Simon with Apricot Day, and both men had a handsome check to look forward to.
It's a great feeling when there's only two in the jump-off that you know that you're going to get a good payday, really. I think it was £60,000 to the second, so at least there was Hugo, Simon and myself in the jump-off, so I knew, you know, we were either going to be first or second.
Who's the last one? Who's the last one?
Time. It's now all up to Nick Skelton.
Nick Skelton has to do one thing, jump clear, faster than 47.47 on Everest Dollar Girl. Let's see if this is the most fitting name in show jumping right now for a horse, because the dollars are extreme. Nick Skelton of Great Britain.
Faster than 47.47 seconds.
Oh boy, did he hit that first fence galloping. Everest Dollar Girl looking better every time she's out in the ring. And he's faster than Hugo Simon at the Canada Planks.
Tough fence coming up now. It's taken so many today.
He's still clear. There's your intermediate time, 30. And Hugo Simon was at 31. Here's the time to beat as he heads down to the last fence, the Du Maurier Limited Vertical. And he rattles it. He has got it. Nick Skelton by 3 full seconds.
The strength and depth of Nick's temperament was underlined by that victory in show jumping's richest Grand Prix against the world's best. He had come through a lean spell to show he was now riding as well as ever, and the name Nick Skelton will be around for many years to come.
When I finish riding, you know, I'd like to put something back into the sport if I could. I mean, ideally, I'd like to set a training establishment up to take young riders and you know, train them or put into them what I know and see if I could, you know, help the sport at the bottom, really. I think if I had my time over again, I'd still go the same way as I have done. Which horse I would have, it's difficult, you know, to actually choose one. But I think my ideal 3 would have been Top Gun, St James and Apollo. If I had those 3 horses now at 9 years old, I think you could win the world with them.
That young teenager who's set out with his dreams has reached the top of his sport on so many different horses. For Nick Skelton, there is still much more to come, but he has already proved that he's one of the truly great riders of the world.
Oh, he's jumped it! Whoa, Skelly! He was a little bit far off, he was so committed.
Nick Skelton, quite rightly delighted in jumping 7'4".